All right, let's start the second half of the meeting with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, and now I'd like to introduce our main speaker. Let's give a big, warm round of applause for Brody. Come on up.
Good evening, Fred Brown. My name is Brody Seagrave, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Troy, that was one heck of a 10-minute pitch, my man. It was very authentic. I love what you said about, I'm going to come up here and speak the truth. And you spoke the truth. So I can tell you as a drug and alcohol counselor and a mandated reporter, I'm only mandated to report an imminent threat to self or others. So nothing that you reported actually falls under the category of a mandated reporter. So take a deep breath. You're good. You're good. And that goes with the clinician in the back. We already talked about it at the break, so I was trying to find you to clear that up. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Am I yelling? No. Okay. Who's the timer? 10 minutes. You're like hiding back there, man. What's going on? You playing freaking Nintendo Cube or something? What's going on? So 10 minutes and 5 minutes, please. Okay? And then I need an accountability partner. Who wants to be my accountability partner? Oh, that was a lot. Okay, let's go with Brandon. What was your first name? Andrew. Oh, it's Andrew and Andrew. Okay. So, and what was your name? Kijana. All right, all four of you can be my accountability partner. So in 10 minutes, if I'm still talking about what it was like, you need to raise your hand. Or, I don't know, start clapping, something to embarrass me. Because not unlike Troy, I'm not going to go all in about, oh man, I'm not going to go, that was funny. I'm not going to go all about what it was like for a million years, because you don't need to hear that. And there's probably a bunch of you guys that have stories that are more impressive or more hardcore or whatever than me. So I'm going to start over once again. I'm going to begin again, as I do many times throughout my day, kind of a mindfulness concept, a meditation concept. I'm Brody and I'm an alcoholic. Brody. My sobriety date is September the 5th of 1998. So I'll do the math for you. I'm 53 years old. I got sober at 26, but I first tried to get sober at 19, and I came in and out ineffectively from 19 to 26. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to not be effective at staying sober, and then I'm going to spend the last 10 minutes talking about how to be effective at staying sober, because I'm guessing you probably want to hear more about how to be effective in staying sober. Am I right? Right. You probably heard how to be ineffective. So, all right. So my father was a Marine, hoorah. I was a Marine Corps brat. My father then ended up going into the Central Intelligence Agency. He spoke Mandarin Chinese, he spoke Thai, he spoke English. He was a very interesting, kind of larger-than-life man. And he was gone a lot of the time when I was growing up. So, you hear these people talk about feeling like they just didn't quite fit in, or they just felt weird all the time. Well, I mean, I'm not saying like I had a bad childhood, and I'm not looking for anyone's sympathy, because I didn't really want for any meals or anything like that. I might have had a nanny, watching over me a lot of the time because my parents were divorced, but it wasn't like a sob story of abuse and trauma that I'm, still recovering from on all these different levels. But I will mention that I never really felt like I fit in, and I went to a different school every year until I was a junior in high school. I got a chance to go to a lot of great schools. I lived in Hong Kong, I lived in Taiwan, I lived in Belgium, I lived in the East Coast, the West Coast. I got to live all over, but I just never felt like I fit in. So starting middle school, high school, I was already looking for those guys that were getting high and drunk behind the freaking, recreation center at school, right? I was always with that group of people. And ultimately, from a young age, from a middle school and high school age, when I put alcohol in my system, I don't have an off switch. And it took me a little bit longer to figure out that when I put prescription opiates, and specifically benzodiazepines, Ativan, Xanax in my system, I also don't have an off switch. So I spent quite a bit of time in the first few years of my sobriety kind of like, looking at like, I'm not an addict. Those are like other people, right? But I was an addict, right? And I identify in this meeting as an alcoholic and an addict because I have the same experience with prescription opiates. And I've never done illicit ones, but I'm sure I would have the same experience with those too. But prescription opiates, which is part of my story, and all that good stuff. But I always seem to kind of fly under the radar. I could always like talk my way out of things, right? So dropped out of high school, got myself into some college, was drinking a lot, taking a lot of pills, dropped out of college, but was able to ultimately scrapped together the ability to make a phone call to my mom, who was sober at the time, around 1994, after I had gotten put in the hospital, getting in a fight in a blackout that I really didn't remember. And she's like, go to Alcoholics Anonymous. So I listened to my mom and went to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I stayed sober for 3.5 years. I did really well initially, got a sponsor, worked the steps, went to 90 meetings in 90 days, and ultimately started helping other alcoholics, started doing H&I, the hospitals and institutions panels, which you can do at 6 months. So I started doing those, really powerful. You walk into a correctional facility or a treatment center or a mental health facility and people are really struggling, and part of what they're struggling from is addiction, you can feel grateful real fast. And that really helped set the original foundation. But what I'm going to share with you next, don't freak out, start and run out, because we're those that would not usually meet, right? You got to remember that. I got to remember that about you, and you got to remember that about me and all the other people you meet. That with about 2 years of sobriety in 1996, I fulfilled at the time my lifelong dream at 24 years old from the time I was a little kid, and I became a Los Angeles police officer. So I'll tell you the story real quick about me and my background investigator. So my background investigator, he goes, hey, Mr. Seagrave, I see here it says that you've been in 5 fights. How many of those involved alcohol? And what do you think my answer was? Fuck, you guys are fucking clairvoyant, man. My answer was all of them, sir. I threw a sir in. Some of you guys call me sir tonight. I like that respect. I was raised to call people sir. In fact, Brandon, you're the first person that called me sir, and Andrew. So my dad would be proud. Yeah, respect to you too, sir. So he looked at me and he looked at that paper and he goes, and he realized that I was telling the truth at that moment. So he's like, well, so tell me more about that. If you're ever asked by a LAPD or other investigator, tell me more about that, that's a leading question. So make sure you have an attorney if you actually did anything wrong, or even if you didn't do anything wrong, because I was a Los Angeles police detective in the past, right? You want to be real careful of that question. He asked me the leading question. He's like, well, tell me more about that. So I said, well, sir, I have a lot of people in my family that are alcoholics. Some of them are dead, some of them are alive. And I don't like the way it affects my judgment when I drink, so I don't drink alcohol anymore at all. So I didn't like straight dime myself out that I'm like a sober member in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't start like rolling around with a freaking big book and dancing and stuff. But I basically copped out at that moment to, my background. And I got passed. And 30 days later, I was in the Los Angeles Police Academy. My father, about 2 months later, was killed in action in China, spying on the Chinese. Sounds weird, but it's a true story. And I took like 1 day off, and then we did the funeral and did all that stuff. But I was like the strong one for everybody. I was gonna be the bulletproof, strong guy. I was gonna stay with my class and graduate in the summer of 1997, before some of you guys were born. I was gonna figure out how to just make it work, and I was gonna be freaking mission specific and tough, right? And long story short, little by little, over that next year period, I didn't seem to call my sponsor as much. I started to get very resentful at the world, at the People's Republic of China, not at people that were of Asian descent, but at the country. I started like focusing on news on China at the time, geopolitical news. I stopped going to a lot of meetings, and I was moving into this. I'd moved into this new culture of being a young rookie Los Angeles police officer, and little by little, I started thinking that the rules didn't apply. I forgot about the fact that I had to do a lot of things to get 2.5, 3 years sober. And before you knew it, I started hanging out with young women that drank alcohol. And I started going to bars with, women at the time. I'm 25, 24, 25 years old, women that were my age. I start going to bars. I start not disclosing to people that I'm in recovery. And then I get hit really hard from behind and I hurt my neck at work. And then I go to a doctor and I don't disclose that I have a past history of having problems with prescription pain medication and benzodiazepines. And so he gave me, what do you think he did? He gave me a bunch, right? So I got the heads up, so I'm gonna move quickly into sobriety. He gave me a bunch, and I started taking those medications, and I didn't talk to my sponsor about it, and I didn't check in with anyone else about it, and before I knew it, man, I was like, and I no longer had any accountability partners, like making sure I don't talk more than 10 minutes, and before I knew it, I was popping a bunch of those pills, and then I'm like, well, I might as well drink, because I just took freaking 4 Vicodin, and that's not sober, and I drank alcohol. And I almost shot 2 guys the first night walking home as a armed, off-duty police officer, walking home in Venice from O'Brien's bar at Main Street and Rose to where I lived at 6th Street. And a couple dudes started following me, and I turned around and I drew down on them. And, and I'm like, what are you doing following me? I used a lot of bad language that I won't get into. And one of them, I don't know what it was, if it was a strap or if it was just a laser pointer. And I see a laser pointer on my white t-shirt right here. And I started to pull the trigger back on a compact 45 caliber Smith & Wesson. And a little voice inside my head said, it's a laser pointer, run home. And I really believe that voice was the voice of God. And now it still took me 9 more months after that to finally get sober. And what that looked like was me showing up to work drunk and high from the night before. And then, as we say in law enforcement, getting shoulder tapped by a sergeant and taken into another room, and then internal affairs doing an investigation about the fact that I was under the influence, right? And as a result of that, I went to employee assistance unit, I went to treatment in 1998, and I had a life-changing event. And I got sober. And this time, I was really willing to take direction. Coachability, ladies and gentlemen. Coachability, teachability, probably 2, they're synonymous, right? But 2 of probably the most effective qualities and attributes. I'm well into sobriety now, okay? So we're good. We're good? We good? I'm retired by the way too. I retired in 2025. So I have no more police power, so don't trip. All right? And I'll tell you the other reason from a confidentiality standpoint why you don't have to worry even more, because I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, but we'll get to that in a minute. So I got sober and I did everything that I needed to do. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I got a sponsor. My sponsor told me one of the most powerful things I've ever heard anyone say in Alcoholics Anonymous, probably the most powerful thing. He said, in your first 90 days, every meeting you go to, I want you to go up and find a newcomer and get their number. And then I want you to find someone else that has a little bit of time and you like something they said and get their number. And you're gonna call them and me every day. And then each day it's gonna be someone new. So my phone, like it's crazy, my phone started becoming like this massive book of newcomers, even early in sobriety. That's what it looked like, right? And so basically, I'm breaking it out for a quick second here for classroom purposes. So basically what it did was, anytime I'm tripping out over the last 27 years, I just put in AANC, AA newcomer. And I have thousands of newcomers in my phone. Thousands and thousands of newcomers. Some of whom are still sober, most of whom are not, right? So he got me involved in learning how to become a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous early in my sobriety, right? Because Alcoholics Anonymous, ladies and gentlemen, is about leadership. I really believe that. So what does that mean? What do you think I mean by leadership in Alcoholics Anonymous?
By example.
And what does someone leading by example do in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Stand listening to others.
Yeah, listening to others, stand for something, right? Being accountable, having a sponsor. What's that?
Each one teach one.
Yeah, each one teach one. Having a sponsor and being a sponsor. Exactly. You said it. You said it in a really cool way. I've never heard it before, but that's what it is. That's accountability. If you guys and gals want to live, and I'm not talking about just live. I'm not talking about not getting locked up again. I'm talking about having an ocean view, if that's what you want. Having a wife to die for, if that's what you want, or a husband to die for, if that's what you want. Having money in the bank and some financial intelligence and some knowledge around money and finance, and not feeling like, man, I'm just like, when's that next paycheck gonna hit? When's it gonna hit? It's been a long time for me, but I dropped out of high school at 17 and decided I was gonna figure it all out on my own, right? And I know what that's like. It's been a while, but I know what that's like. So if those are the things that you want, become a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous. Becoming a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous is about having a sponsor and being a sponsor. That's about doing a lot of inconvenient things. I do a lot of inconvenient things today. Fast forwarding, I worked a gang unit. I ran a youth program. I was a field training officer for 7 years, and then I got a knock on the door. Hey, all of the sober police officers with the internal employee assistance unit with the city of Los Angeles are pissed off at the psychologists, and they all quit. And you go around speaking at roll calls and speaking to people about being in recovery. Would you come work this unit? And in 2008, I became the chemical dependency addiction prevention coordinator for the Los Angeles Police Department. And I did that job for 3 years. Crazy, right? So you go from waking up one day and you're in roll call and you're drunk and high, and then you get disciplined from the night before because you're such an alcoholic that you don't realize you're drunk and high. But all these other people see that you are, to eventually running that unit 9 years later. So that's what I did in 2008. I went to Loyola Marymount University, courtesy of the city of Los Angeles and your taxpayer dollars. Thank you very much. And I became a KDAC, probably like some of the folks that are KDACs here, beautiful Fred Brown. By the way, it was a pleasure to meet you, Roxy. Roxy, correct? And what a powerful tribute and legacy that you continue every day in this place for your late husband. Because of what you guys built together. And Liz, it was a pleasure to meet you as well. Thank you so much for everything that you bring to the mission for all these young men and women on a daily basis as well. So I started running this unit, and it was interesting because we'd have about 50 or 100 police officers and civilian employees that would get sent into our unit because they got freaking caught up in something, like I did in 1998, right? So they would get referred to us, and what do you think was 95% of the time, what do you think you would hear coming out of the mouths of these people that are normally putting handcuffs on other people after handcuffs get put on them? What do you think they would say to me when we would sit down and we talk about what happened? Yeah.
Guilt,
So
blame,
very,
and shame.
what's that?
Guilt, blame, and shame.
Yeah, so very similar. Man, I didn't realize that I had that much alcohol in my system. I didn't realize that I was that drunk. I didn't realize that I was a .25. I didn't realize that I was a .31. Thank you. I didn't realize that I did that because I don't remember any of it. Right? And to a large extent, that would be that sort of common, that normal denial that we see at the beginning, right? When people look to maybe get involved in recovery and first try and figure out this deal of recovery. So that's a normal part, but the walls are 10 times as thick because there's really like this arrogance.
Yeah.
There's like this like, man, I put people in jail. You know, I go out and protect the streets, man. I can't admit that like I'm an alcoholic. Are you kidding me? Like that's insane. And I'll tell you, a lot of those people I worked with are dead. They didn't make it. I'll be straight up, you know, sworn Los Angeles police officers, and they're dead today. So this deal, it doesn't care if you're educated, if you have a gun, a badge, if you're a physician, if you're a judge. You know, it doesn't care if you're the first lady of the United States, Betty Ford. This will be coming to take your life. Absolutely. And look, for whatever reason, I felt dysregulated a lot. I just felt like kind of anxious and weird and like, from the time I was young, I would feel that, right? And then I would drink something, I would take some pills. I was a high-functioning alcoholic, you know, until I showed up drunk. But I was kind of a high-functioning alcoholic, right? I had a job, I never got arrested. I was super lucky, that's all it was. I don't believe it was God's grace. Please. You know, I don't know God well enough to know that it was His grace that I wasn't arrested. I should have been arrested, but I wasn't. You know, maybe that's because I was meant to run that unit 9 years later. I don't know. But the bottom line is, this deal really, really wants to kill me. And the problem with being an alcoholic and an addict is when I try and put pills or alcohol in my system to regulate myself, I become more dysregulated. Why do I become more dysregulated?
Spiritual malady.
What's that, Andrew?
Can't be allowed.
Yeah, because I don't have an off switch. Exactly. I'm chemically imbalanced. I don't have an off switch. So that's why I had to make phone calls today, right? The same way that I was making phone calls way back when, in September of 1998, like my sponsor said. Remember, what is it that my sponsor told me to do? Call a newcomer every day. Call who else?
Yourself. Sponsor.
Sponsor, right.
Have a commitment.
Yeah, beautiful. So let's look at Brody Seagrave's phone today. Because it's about accountability, right? It's about accountability. Well, Tom Hyatt, that doesn't really count. Right? 'Cause we were talking about this. My daughter, that's cool. Peter H., my sponsor. Boom. At 3:45. Jesse M. at 1:20. He's one of the guys that after I went out and started drinking and using again and losing my mind, kept calling me. He was only one of two people. The other guy became my sponsor. So I called Jesse, someone I respect in the program, right? I called him. Jordan, friend of Bill's. Victor, chronic relapser, was fired by LAPD 2 years ago. Why do you think he was fired? Alcohol, exactly. Yeah, then he became a firefighter and he got fired from that too. Crazy, right? So, those are the people that I called today. I called somebody new, I called my sponsor, I called somebody that I respected, right? And then I talked about Jordan, so I had one extra bonus, someone else I respected. So, that's really what I want to impart to you guys. If you want to have it all, really do the work. The trauma work that you're doing with the Liz's of the world, very important, right? Do that work. Get to commitments at meetings. You know, whether if you can do that while you're here, great. Once you leave here, I had 2 commitments early on. The first 10 years of my sobriety, I had commitments. I still take commitments from time to time, right? And I always say yes to these commitments, always. I never say no. I might reschedule. I can't do it on that date, but I can do it on this date. I never say no. I've never said no in 27 years. So, get a sponsor. Learn how to be a sponsor. Become a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous. The steps aren't perfect. I'll tell you this much. I hated myself less when I went through the steps.
That's right.
I still hated myself a little bit. I'll be honest. I wasn't like, oh, I'm perfect. I did the steps. Everything's great. But I hated myself less. And that's a good thing. And then I had a model with which now to guide someone else through the steps. A model. I had a model with which to guide someone new through the steps. Right? So, learn to be a leader in Alcoholics Anonymous. Take direction. And you know, those things that I talked about. My beautiful wife, Cynthia, who's also a police officer. Don't ever do that. Don't ever marry a police officer. Please, don't ever marry a Hispanic police officer, especially. But as soon as I figured out that she kind of ran the show, things got a lot better. Right? A lot better, people. But I got a beautiful wife. I got a beautiful life. I'm sober long term. I've got guys that I sponsor. I actually have that ocean view today. And I don't say that to be like, make you guys think that I think I'm better than you. But my grandfather died of freaking alcoholism. He died of alcoholism, right? My great aunt and my other aunt and my uncle all died of alcoholism. My cousin died of alcoholism. And I have an ocean view. I broke the curse. You can break the curse too. Do what you're told. Take direction. Be an A student in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? When I come to this meeting again, and I hope it's soon, I know it's like by invitation only, but maybe I get to come back. I don't know. All the seats up here should be filled, right? I get the back, like it's cool. You guys are listening, attentive. It's better than a lot of AA meetings where guys are like checking out. You guys are like totally with me, and I appreciate that respect. But my point is, it's kind of a metaphor. But be an A student. Sit in the front row of Alcoholics Anonymous. Kind of a metaphor. I'm not saying literally, right? But sometimes literally too, like I did today. I sat in the front row because I know I can still die from this today, and that healthy fear keeps me alive and keeps me renewing the things I'm doing in Alcoholics Anonymous. Thanks a lot for letting me share.